Good morning, everyone. It's been a while since I've posted up another video. Yeah, it's been a real interesting month here, as hasn't it been? And at least for us in the British Columbia and Pacific Northwest. As you may have seen on the news, there's just dozens and dozens of forest fires blazing everywhere, and the air quality has been significantly impacted for the worse. It's been at high risk, and people have been asked to kind of minimize their physical activity and going outside, whenever possible. So they say though today and over the next couple days, we're going to get some wind, maybe even some rain that will help out these forest fires and clear the air for us. Um, so although it's been warm and still, not too bad, it still feels like, hey, what about our summer here? We've had what has been an awesome summer, set some temperature records, some sunshine records, but we're not getting to enjoy it all. So anyway, that's what's happening for us here in the northwest part of the United States and in British Columbia. Today, I was inspired yesterday to say a little bit about parental discipline. As of course as a family therapist, I am constantly encountering parents approaching me, in person, through the internet, social media, what have you, about the challenges that they're having disciplining their teens. And one of the things that I became aware of and began to share with parents a long time ago, um, you know, and it came as a question in my parent leadership group, that I had put out to parents, and the question was, how many of you enjoy being a disciplinarian? How many of you enjoy, administering discipline, disciplining your children? And of course, their eyes rolled, right? And it's like, oh my God, are you kidding me, John, with that question? Of course, nobody raised their hand, and I said to them, you know why that is because you don't understand what discipline is. You're really in the wrong position. And as I've explained previously, and as I always do to the families that I work with and the people that I work with, I have a sports background. So I'm all about, being in the right position. And I have just gained greater appreciation for that metaphor um, throughout my counseling career as well. It's just oftentimes people can't see the way through. They can't, make shifts. They can't resolve conflict because of the position that they've taken. So as a coach, I'm constantly inviting people into different positions, and I'm constantly, suggesting to people that the reason why you can't see the way through, the reason why you're feeling exhausted, the reason why you're feeling hopeless, the reason why, you're feeling anxious, is because you're not seeing this correctly. And you're not seeing it because you're not in the right position. You see, it makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, based upon the position that we take, if you want to say that, based upon the place on which we reside, we get a perspective. Our perspectives come from where we've taken up residence, from the ground that we stand on. And I've often said, that's why it's even woven into our language. People want to know where you come from, because it says something about your perspective and how you're going to see things. So that's a whole other discussion about making sure that we are rooted, that we are grounded, that we have taken up residence I want to say, on a rock, like a lighthouse on something solid. And what becomes clear is that so many of us, and myself included through life, have tried to do life from positions, from places that have just, not been true, have been untrue. And usually what happens in those situations is that the place that we reside seems to offer some truth, but not the whole truth. And so we really have to be grown up. We really have to be willing to dig in and question ourselves. If we're not getting the results that we'd like to get, then, then man up, then demonstrate some mature accountability for the results that we've created. So I wanted to share a few thoughts right now, especially if you're one of those folks who are, questioning this whole discipline thing, especially in this era that we're in right now. I mean, there's been a significant shift. We've definitely moved into an age of inflated entitlement and indulgence. The kinds of disciplinary strategies and actions that once were acceptable are no longer acceptable. People used to live in more extended family situations and communities where, belief systems, morals were very similar. That has all kind of been jumbled up a bit, and it's hard for people to find a place in there. And I especially experienced this with new immigrants to the country who, are coming here and who have some very significant traditional ways of looking at things, and they come to the Western world, North America, and it's very different. So let me share a few things here, a few problems. Like I said, first thing, most parents don't even understand what discipline is. I'm going to try to keep this short, so please bear with me. I don't want to go on and on here for you, but email me, message me with more questions. So first of all, to understand discipline, you have to understand that discipline comes from the same root word as disciple. Disciple means to be a student of a path. So when one calls themselves a disciplinarian, it really means that one is calling themselves a student of a path. Now, the way I tell parents, think of it this way. If you have a child, who is in 8th grade, and you yourself are in 12th grade, right? And this young teenager shows up at high school for the first time. You might mentor them, but what you're sharing with them is not your rules. You're introducing them into the school's rules, into something bigger. And that's the role of a parent in terms of discipline. So when we call ourselves a disciplinarian, what we're doing, parents, is that we're introducing our children into a teaching, into a body of knowledge. And it's the teaching and the body of knowledge that informs them and disciplines them. It provides consequences and boundaries, etc. It's that greater body of knowledge that carries the authority. Does that make sense? So that means that, for instance, if both show up late on a particular day, the 8th grader and the 12th grader both show up late on a particular day, who is held to the greatest levels of accountability and responsibility? Of course, it's the 12th grader. You see, so many parents, and this is the second thing, so many parents come from a position of entitlement. In other words, do it because I said, do it because I'm the adult. Or parents say to themselves, I can't wait until I become the adult then. Then what? Then what that usually means is that they make themselves exempt from what the rules are. They make themselves exempt from the law. They make themselves the authority. And so when the child then, kind of experiences tension as they engage rules, boundaries, expectations, it becomes personal. The parent begins to take that personally. It creates personal rifts within the relationship. It disrupts the attachment, and that's because the parent has mistakenly taken on the role of being the authority. They have stepped out of bounds. This is what I call losing integrity. This is what I call losing integrity. Now, the parents will blame the youth for being disrespectful, but actually it's the parent, because the parent has stepped beyond their boundaries. The parent should stay within the rules, if you will, the laws, the the expectations themselves. Not only that, they should be the leader. So anything that a parent asks their child to do, they should be willing to do 10 times more. Not as punishment, but as a demonstration of mature capacity and leadership. If you've been on the planet longer, you should have bigger muscles, right? Your capacity, should be greater. Your maturity should be greater, especially in those levels, in those aspects of relationship that seem difficult, such as accountability, responsibility, humility, compassion, sensitivity, thoughtfulness, respect. Those are many of the things that parents accuse their children of not giving them. But then when I look into the relationship, the parents aren't giving that. And somehow the parents have made themselves exempt from the rules. And when you look into that exemption comes from a feeling of entitlement. And so they're caught in indulgent patterns that are counterproductive and diminishing the relationship. So I covered a second one there, which is parental entitlement. Parents, do not go into entitlement. Do not entitle yourself to special permissions. I can do it because I'm the adult. I can do it because I pay the bills. I can do it because you're living under my house. I can do it. No. All we're doing is setting up a pattern of indulgence for the child, because then the teen says, someday when I grow up, then I can make myself exempt from what is right and true. So all we're doing is passing on templates of entitlement and indulgence. There's way more to say about that, but I'll leave that right there. So again, the first thing, you got to understand, you got to have the proper position, the proper perspective on what discipline is. The next thing I'll mention real quick is parents don't understand what parenting is about. I do a whole series of kind of discussions, and I've written on this. I call it the point of parenting. Parents have to understand, especially within the philosophy of North America, in the free world, is that the point of parenting is to support the individuation process. In other words, all parents, as far as I can tell, and all the parents I've talked to, have a deep heart's desire for their sons or daughters to become their own man or their own woman, to become self-motivated and self-directed, to become who they were meant to become. You see, we that can't happen when a parent is expecting absolute obedience from their children. It can't happen when parents expect their children to walk in their footsteps. It can't happen when parents expect their children, to swallow hook, line, and sinker all the advice and the lecturing and the information that's being given. I always say to parents in my group is that, I would never want my son to follow in my footsteps. How is that respectful to me? And how is that respectful to him? My heart's desire is for him to take whatever good, whatever information I try to pass on or whatever he got, and take it to the next level, not replicate it. That would be a waste of time. That would be dishonorable. It reminds me of the old, Christian story of the talents, where, a rich person gives servants, a number of talents to invest somewhere in the community, and that's the idea. As parents, we give things to our kids, not so they'll just hide it and keep it and store it away, but to make it grow, to evolve it. And the thing is, parents, is that because we come from a particular time and place, in history, when our kids take these talents and modify them and evolve them and grow them in the world, we're not going to be familiar with that. And it can create some anxiety. So you have to have a proper position, a perspective on what discipline is. Discipline is us playing the role of what I call liberator. We want our children to become free and to experience all the good things that life has to offer. So I am a facilitator of liberation. I am a facilitator of individuation. I'm a supporter. I help orchestrate individuation. What that looks like is me having teachable moment conversations with my son. So, most parents will say, that it hit the fan when their teen turned, 11, 12, 13, about high school age, right? And exactly, that's where parents need to make a shift. Parents need to stop lecturing, stop advice giving, stop telling them what to do. Why? Because all that stuff, all those rules and things of that nature were given already a long time ago. It's like training wheels on a bike. All these rules and lectures and information is like training wheels on a bike. They help the child learn how to ride the bike, but ultimately the training wheels are also very limiting. At some point, parents, you have to take the training wheels off. At some point, you quit lecturing, you quit giving advice, you quit telling them what to do. You should know by now, if you've been doing that, you're creating some tension there. You're experiencing some pushback. You're getting the eyes are rolling. You may even be resented. There may be already arguments going on in your home because this is the strategy that you've been using. It's a helpful strategy when kids are young because they don't have the capacity, to understand what is safe and things. And so naturally society is geared to give those things to young children. To give what? To give the basics, to give the fundamentals of life. But we're not meant to just stay there. We're meant to get on that bike and try some things. And parents let go of the bike and take the training wheels off, and that bike gets a little wobbly, and parents start to get a little anxious, and they want to jump in and do something about it. And that's the shift that needs to be made for parents, especially at puberty. What is the shift? The shift is moving from doing to being. Doing to being. So hold on for just a sec. I'm just getting ready to go into a webinar here. But yes, if we as parents have done our job decently, we're building skill and capacity when our children, are younger and growing. Doesn't it make perfect sense? I love the orchestration of this, just archetypally, is that as our children gain skill and capacity, they're able to do more for themselves. Now, on the flip side of that, as parents, we're getting older, and physically, we're less able to do things anyway. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful orchestration. I mean, I know for myself, I'm 56 years old right now. My son's 25. My gosh, I don't hardly do anything for him at all. The nice thing about that is because, my rotator cuff is bugging me. And my knees bug me from time to time. And, I can't sprint. I can't jump. I can't run around like I used to. But my son doesn't expect me to. And I don't expect to do that because he is super capable on his own. He's doing things for me now. And I get to sit back and enjoy. So I need to shift from doing to being. Now, what do I mean by that? Being. That oftentimes is a very difficult shift for parents. Why? Because it's easy to do stuff, isn't it? It's easy to give your kid a ride somewhere. It's easy to pick them up when they need a ride. It's easy to make them a meal. It's easy to sit and watch a movie. It's easy to go down to the school and talk to the teachers about the stress they're experiencing. It's easy to do. Very tangible, I mean, it's just immediate. There's more immediate gratification in it for the parent. Shift to being, though, and here's the thing too, we talk about raising our kids up, right? When they're little, we can physically pick them up and move them around, right? Pull them out of harm's way, do whatever, turn them in a different direction if they're going a direction we don't want to go. We just physically pick them up. But we all know, right, that around puberty, if we try to do that physically, we're going to start a fight. But we're still parents in the role, in the job of lifting them up. But we don't lift them up by doing things. We lift them up by who we're being for them. Now, this hit me significantly when my son went into the military. And if you see the picture behind me here, you can see that he's in the Marine Corps. So when he went to boot camp, the tears rolled out of my eyes, like they had never rolled before. And, and as the parents in my parent group asked me what that was like, to kind of let that happen, they asked me, weren't you scared or whatever? Weren't you scared for him going into the Marine Corps? I said, no, What my biggest kind of wrestling match was that I was always used to being close enough to him to be able to do something for him. I always had his back. I always was right there, within a few miles or whatever it was. Of course, that grew wider and wider as he got older. But I always had this feeling that if he ever got in trouble, I could do something about it. And then when he went into the Marine Corps, went to boot camp, now he's all the way in Malaysia, going into Africa, and very well could see combat and be in harm's way. And there's not anything I can do. But what I can, if you will, do is when he FaceTimes me, when he calls me and he shares with me some of the challenges, which are many and very difficult and strenuous at all levels, physically and psychologically, I can be something for him. And I often say to parents, it's a sweet poetic thing, isn't it? It's like a loving promise that we're keeping. The promise something like, when he's, feeling down, I would promise to bring him up. When he's in the dark, I will be the light. When he's confused, I will bring clarity. When he feels despair, I will bring hope. It's very much like the prayer of St. Francis. This is what I call the sacred promise and vow that every parent has. And in that sacred promise and vow, it's not about what I'm going to do. It's about who I promise to be. And that becomes incredibly powerful. So when he's thousands of miles away on the other side of the globe, he doesn't need me to do anything for him. He's way more equipped than I'll ever be. I would be a liability if I were over there. My strength is not what I can do. My strength, a parent's strength is who they are being. That's what's uplifting. I am still in the role of raising up and bringing him up, but not physically, not by doing, but it's through my being. And my being continues to grow and grow and grow and get more powerful as I age. Unlike my physical body, which gets more depleted, my character, my very soul gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I become more powerful in my presence and who I'm being for him and being for everybody. So that's the shift. A shift from doing to being. So parents, if your son or daughter is 13, 14, 15 or beyond, and you're still cooking all their meals and you're still running them around all over the place, you're out of integrity. You're a liability and not an asset. You don't have integrity with the truth of who you really are and the point of parenting, which is to liberate and to make them free. Your job is to help them build skill and capacity in order to achieve self-efficacy and freedom. How will you know whether you're doing that or not? Well, take a look at your results. Are you feeling exhausted? Are you feeling resentful? Are people around you exhausted by you? Are they feeling resentful towards you? Those will be the signs and the symptoms. Okay? The last one, and this is going to be a whole other presentation that I do. Parents, I always stress, in this sports metaphor, it's like when people come to the playing field of life, come to the playing field of parenting, you have to know what's in your bag. What are you bringing to the playing field of parenting? One of the biggest things that I have to work on with parents is being aware of their own family of origin issues and patterns, trauma and disappointments that they're bringing to their parenting. And usually they have no awareness that this is going on. Now, one of the big things that I'll speak about today that goes on is what I call trauma vows. What that means is that when a parent, as a small child or somewhere through life, they don't have to be children, they can have gone through a divorce or an illness or whatever it is, but when we go through traumatic incidences, there's a part of our psyche that will make a promise. So let's say, for instance, and this is a typical scenario, a parent will grow up in a house where there was arguing or violence or drug abuse and alcoholism, what do you think that child, first of all, let's think about attachment theory. In attachment theory, the child looks towards the adults, to be cared for and to be cared for well. And because these parents are preoccupied with their own pain, they haven't done any healing work, or they're preoccupied with addiction and indulgence, so they're not able to be present for the child and meet the child's needs. What do you think the first promises the child is going to make? So they first put their trust in people. And that trust, was broken. Their needs weren't met. So one might say, well, I'll never trust people again. So there's the first promise and the first vow. So there's vows that can be like that. It might be, I'll never trust men again. I'll never trust women again. I'll never trust anybody again. On the other side of it, if you can't trust them, what's the next promise? The next promise to myself is the only one I can trust is myself. So the only one I can trust is myself to keep me safe and to meet my needs. Now, depending on the significance of the trauma, you see, it's going to be the strength of that promise, that vow. We make a vow to ourselves. I will never do this. I will always make sure this happens. So let's say if a parent grows up in a family situation where people were just stressed out, tension, conflict, in other words, unhappy, everybody felt unloved, what do you think the promise would be? Someday, when I grow up and have a family, I'm going to make darn sure that everybody's happy and feels loved, right? So this parent, here's the vow in place, and it's firmly in place, totally connected to that significant trauma where they felt devastated, they were almost going to die. So we really have to understand how committed we are to the realization of that promise, of that vow. But no vow is any good unless we have a plan. So there has to be an action plan, if you will. Now I'm a man on a mission. So now I have a mission. I have a plan. Okay, well, I figure out, if I act this way, if I take on these roles, if other people take on certain roles and stay within the bounds of those roles, then we'll all be safe. We'll all be happy and we'll feel loved. Because remember, that's how this idea unfolds. It unfolds like what I call a Trojan horse. On the outside, it looks great. Why does it look great? Because it says that it's a plan for love and happiness. But what happens is, so then this parent begins to work really hard to make everybody happy and feel loved. So that's what it becomes for that parent. It becomes kind of a mission of doing. It becomes a mission of hard work. And so this will be the parent who says to me, with tears rolling out of their eyes, feeling heartbroken. This will be the parent who says, they just don't appreciate what I've done. They just don't appreciate the sacrifices that I've made. They just don't appreciate everything I do for them. So all I want is them to be happy and loved. And yet they're all angry. Nobody feels loved. I don't feel loved, says the parent. I feel resented. I resent them too because of all the hard work. So, if this was really a love story at play, do you think it would end up like that? Absolutely not. So through some serious introspection and some accountability and responsibility, a real willingness to do that, what a parent can begin to see is that what's off about that, what's driving that, is actually fear. Right? Because that's where it originated. It originated out of a tragic experience, and there was a tragic narrative. The promise that the person made to themselves is that they never wanted to experience that again. What is that? Well, being devastated, almost dying. Yeah, because that's what it felt like. So the plan was really not a plan of love and happiness. The plan was a survival plan. The plan was designed to avoid tragedy. It wasn't designed to live. It wasn't designed to live. It was a survival plan. It's not about living, it's about surviving. And it's not about love or happiness. It's actually a very selfish plan. It's the parents' plan to keep themselves safe. But the only way to realize that plan is is that everybody stay in their assigned roles. So the parent who is very wedded to their vow, their trauma vow, becomes very controlling, manipulative, forceful. Any movement on anybody in the family's part to step outside of the assigned role creates anxiety, right? Because all of a sudden, people being themselves, starts to open up the possibility that they could get hurt again. So the parent becomes super over, doing so much for the family, super over diligent, helicopter parent. They're just doing everything, but they tell themselves it's because they love their family and they want everybody to be happy. Actually, that isn't even true at all. And that needs to be uncovered. That needs to be uncovered, and it needs to be accounted for. Because as long as that's running, it's going to create the very thing that the parent feared, which is tragedy. So yeah, this is a dynamic that I rarely hear talked about by professionals, and it's just so evident. So think about, I call this the trauma vows, and I lecture on it, present on it all the time. I'm going to do a presentation here soon in November for the RCMP in British Columbia here and in the Surrey area on this very topic. So parents, those are a few tips, a few things to kind of think about. And I know they're heavy duty stuff, but you got to do it, right? Because if you want to be effective, if you want to be the best leader that you can possibly be, if you want to make good on your promise of love and respect for your family, then doing this work is a work of honor. It's a work of maturity and a work of integrity. And I know you're all about that. So I'm going to get off to this webinar here, and I hope this has been helpful. Again, message me if you have any questions. Have a great day.